Hey everybody, it's Robert from Meis Morphs here. Uh, uh, gonna be in here cleaning a little bit, but I'm gonna have the opportunity to talk with everybody while I'm doing my routine maintenance and everything. But let me start things out. There are gonna be some changes coming with Meis Morphs overall. I made mention in a short that depending on the breeding season, which is slow going, uh, that depending on the outcome, whether I'm successful in making any more, uh, that I'd probably end up stop breeding or become more selective about it. Uh, this decision is not so much based on success and failures that I've had so far, because I've only been effectively breeding for maybe about one season, but I've been dealing with ball pythons for about a little over 4 years, almost 5. Uh, I am, by fact, one of the many people that came into snakes, the hobby, and breeding during the COVID pandemic. And needless to say, a lot of things changed during that time period, and people were trying to find ways to either make a buck or pass the time. Now, I wasn't so much wanting to make a buck or pass the time. I was just taking an opportunity to get over a long-held fear I had of snakes. Now, mind you, the fear I had about snakes was something that developed as a kid living on a Marine Corps air station in North Carolina, specifically Cherry Point. Uh, yeah, a lot of the experiences I had with snakes back then were the venomous varieties. Too many close calls and too many kids thinking that they were going to be the next Steve Irwin. Yeah, that type of stuff. But when I started getting into it and everything, I initially started with about 6 ball pythons, 4 neonates that have grown up, and 2 full adult ones. Now, because the adult ones were the only ones I could breed at the time, then I tried it out. I had mixed success. Needless to say, the one female that was told me was being a proven breeder with a high amount of success was not necessarily so. I ended up getting 3 good eggs out of her and a couple of bad ones, and she also retained a couple of eggs. And that was a pretty scary experience. Things have changed over the years, acquired more ball pythons, and then I've also acquired boas. Now, this last year, we were successful in breeding, first time breeder with the albino, and we ended up getting 7 good eggs initially, and then our one adult female that from the prior experience ended us giving 1, so we ended up having a total of 8. But because of a thermostat issue that season, we ended up losing a couple of promising snakes, and we also ended up losing 2 of the snakes from the first clutch. So, hello, Mr. Singh. How you doing? I'm gonna take these out. Well, here we are, breeding season 2, and breeding season 2 is starting to look a lot like how last year. I'm doing good. Uh, Last year's season was a slow going season. for the ball python market because I don't know if it was an environmental thing or whatnot, or the female snakes were just ovulating very late. I'm from the USA, Virginia, but uh, but yeah, this season is also looking to be very slow. Not many signs and ovulations. I'm waiting for most of them to get back on feed. Uh, uh, Here lately, I've been starting to have second thoughts about breeding and a whole bunch of other stuff simply because the ball python market and other snake markets are considerably oversaturated, and there seems to be, if there's a lot of snakes on morph market right now, it's because there are. Uh, they're mostly snakes that are put up there by large scale breeders and stuff like that, and then every so often you will have the vast amount of small scale breeders that are up there that are posting their snakes for sale. But because the United States economy is in a bit of a recession and the cost of living is going up, not everybody can get into this hobby or trade and buy a snake. But needless to say, the only things that seem to be passing around snake wise are in between breeders because they either want, there's either females or males with the good genes and qualities that they're looking for that they want to prove out against some of their own snakes, or they're looking to make new morphologies and new combinations. Now, that being said, here's the problem. I think the overall hobby and the industry needs to take a step back on breeding. Because if you're going to end up creating so many snakes just to chase after the new trends, the new morphologies and combinations, stuff like that, you're going to end up having a whole bunch of excess snakes that don't fit what you want, and you're not going to be able to push out there because they're not what everybody wants at the moment. And if you're going to breed something, especially snakes or any animal to begin with, you need to make sure at least you need to make sure that you can at least get them homes, whether you can sell them to local pet shops that you deal with, or if you sell them to individual people that you vet, that you can teach them and inform them how to take care of them, or whatever. It's just that how are you gonna make the market grow and generate interest into a new generation of people to be interested in snakes if people can't either afford them or you can't keep them long enough to keep them alive and then get them going? Man, we either have to be very selective or we just need to stop breeding in mass, because at this point it's starting to look like the entire all it's starting to look like all the big names in the hobby and the industry, and without having to name drop them, you probably know who they are. You've seen them on multiple social media platforms, whether it's here on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, or X as they're calling it, Facebook, stuff like that. These people have platforms and they are constantly pushing these snakes. And it's getting to a point where it's like cults of personality, and I don't dig cults of personality. I've followed some of these guys for the information that they and the experience they have, but because of listening to them on other topics and hearing them talk to each other on live streams just like this or on podcasts, I've kind of gotten I kind of got a new perception on who they actually really are. And What troubles me is that even though they want people to come into this industry, into this hobby, get into snakes and everything, it seems like they point a lot of fingers and point a lot of blame towards the little people rather than acknowledging that maybe they could also be the problem. Why the market is the way it is, why snakes aren't being bought by new interesting people to the next generation. And I've ended up unfollowing them and only following just like small people, like small scale hobbyists and small scale breeders that haven't made their mark yet, but they're trying to. But they're also doing things differently as far as like being more ethical about their breeding practices and maybe thinking more in the aspects of whether or not, if they've come to my conclusion, whether or not they want to be breeders and want to just be keepers and hobbyists. Now, now, that being said, I guess I'm just going to put it out there. I'm putting out an open challenge, an ethical challenge to all the major snake breeders, keepers, and all that stuff to see whether or not they can stop their breeding practices as far as like year round breeding, start practicing more selective breeding, or just stop breeding altogether until they get all the snakes that they have produced sold. Now, when I say these large scale breeding operations, these are the guys that have been in the industry for like 20, 30, maybe upwards of 40 years. And they've made their bones, they've paid their dues, and they have made money. Lots of freaking money out of this stuff. And if they can't accept the terms of this challenge, as far as like being selective about their breeding of the ball pythons, or coming to a stop as far as like to make sure that the market isn't oversaturated and they can get some of the snakes homes. If they can do that, great. Then they're actually using their heads and they actually value the lives of these animals. If they can't do that, then that answers the one big thing that I have been suspecting all along. It's nothing more than product. They are pushing product, meaning they are wanting to make money. They don't care about the animals. Now, also in another previous short, I brought up that if people did not know this, they need to know it now. That the ball python itself is on the IUCN Red List, labeled as near threatened. Why is that so? It's due to freaking the international pet trade, expansion of agricultural lands, and uses of pesticides. That has a drastic effect on the wild population, and because of the international pet trade, that also affects how the snake business actually really works, because it will come to a point where you're going to need new genetics, an untainted line of snakes. Right now, all the snakes here in the United States and Canada that are used for all these by all these breeders and everything, especially large scale ones, are going to be, I'd say be in about 100 years. In about 100 years, if this hobby and industry is still going, they will be overbred and inbred. There won't be a single snake that will be genetically indistinguishable from the others. And I say this because in the last few years, we've also found out that with ball pythons, that inbreeding with certain breeding of certain morphologies for looks has resulted in either infertility issues or neurological issues, like say with the spiders or the spider complex. There are now more snakes outside of that specific morphology that have that neurological head wobble. Now, as that spreads due to breeding practices not being freaking taken seriously at all, it's going to cause a problem where you're going to end up having snakes that weren't in that morphology base that are going to have that issue. And as I said, there are certain morphologies now that are having fertility issues. If you've heard about desert ghost, yes. If you get a visual desert ghost, freaking, especially if it's a female, it's more than likely not going to be exceptionally fertile, and if it does, it's not going to make it to term. And that means you're going to end up either having you're going to end up having an egg-bound female, or a bunch of dead babies, or you're going to end up having a bunch of dead babies egg-bound while having also a dead female. And I consider that a very big problem, because the United States, as far as like the hobby is concerned, hasn't adopted some of the resolutions, say like overseas, like in Europe, where they have a little bit more regulations and stuff like that. In fact, I think over in Europe they actually put a ban on breeding of the spider morphology due to the neurological head wobble. That's pretty smart on them. But getting back to the whole thing about ball pythons being in the IUCN Red List, because there is not a definite count on the wild population, there's no way to tell how many wild ball pythons are out there in Africa that would be used to be imported to here in the States or Canada or anywhere else via the pet trade. Now, if there were a serious study where they can actually get a total count, then maybe, just maybe, we'd have an accurate count on what the wild population is like. Because if it's actually lower than what it's projected to be, based on all the snake farming and pet trade data in the past, then we're more likely looking at the possibility of the ball python wild type probably going from being near threatened to mid-grade to high-grade levels of the IUCN list of being almost near endangered to close to being functionally extinct. And I expect that to happen within, just like I said, within about 100 years. If things keep going the way they are going without any thought or regulation as to preventing that. Now, if nothing happens with me this season, as far as like having any more babies or any eggs and stuff like that, and having a good season like everybody else might want to or try to, then I'm going to go to the point where I'm going to either stop breeding or I'm going to be selective about it and try my best to get some of the babies homes. That would be the smart thing to do. If I get nothing, then all I'm going to do is maintain on keeping the snakes I do have alive, well fed, watered, proper substrate, all that stuff. I will go from being a hobbyist breeder to a hobbyist keeper, if you can get what I'm saying on that one. And I'll just maintain what I have here ball python wise, and I'll maintain what I have upstairs boa wise. And I think that would be the smart, most respectful thing towards the species, because even though most of the snakes, well, all the snakes I have are captive bred, I still respect them as animals, and I also respect them as the creatures that they are. They are predatory animals that feed on live animals, and I'll just keep it at that. But yeah. I know what I've probably said about the opening challenge to the large-scale breeders about changing their breeding practices and their ethics and concentrating on either trying to get the ones that they already have homes may rub people wrong. It might open me up to online attacks, harassment, comments, and stuff like that. But I'm not unfamiliar to that type of stuff. I mean, I served in the Army a long time ago, between 2002 to almost to 2007, but I'm not immune to certain things like that, harassment, comments, and stuff about my service and stuff. But because I am old enough, I'm quick enough to realize that certain things need to change. And right now, this hobby, this industry that we all find ourselves, enveloped in, needs to change. There's already enough infighting, sharpshooting, so to speak, between all of us over ethics, practices, containment, feeding, that we're losing sight of the bigger picture. Is that we are people that have animals that we either choose to keep as pets and we try to do best by them, or we're the people that are just breeding them for profit. And I don't want to be that. I don't want to be like those other guys. And I know that's probably going to be a hot button thing. Everybody's probably going to end up questioning themselves like, hey, am I doing the right thing? Are we doing the right thing? Are the big guys doing the right thing? And if they're not, then maybe this hobby has become its own worst thing now. If that's the case, then I have no problem saying what I've said. And if anybody does have a problem with what I've said, then they either have a guilty conscience or they feel they need to have to they feel the need that they have to protect this thing that they've created. Because if anybody else starts realizing it, it's all going to crumble. And then the ones that are caught in the middle are obviously the animals. So I don't know. I mean, at the most, I don't know. Somebody say something. I mean, I feel like I'm talking to the air or anything. I mean, if anything, leave a comment on my community page or on some of my content or on this particular live video. If you watch it again and you hear what I'm saying and it rings true in your head, say something. Let me know that other people are finally coming to this train of thought. Because right now I feel like I'm the only one that's doing so. Alright, well, you all have a good day.